Hello, welcome once again to Papa Nick's Music. I am, as always, your host, Papa Nick Lewis, and today we are talking about the Kinks. We are big fans of the Kinks here at Papa Nick's Music, and when we first started thinking about doing these music discussion videos, Kinks were right up there. They were the Beach Boys and the Monkees and the Kinks. I have always been planning to do this video. I've been working on it for a while now. Um, but I kept pushing it off, kicking it down the road a little bit. Okay, I'll work on that a little bit later. I'll work on that a little bit later. And there are a couple of reasons why it's taken me this long to get to the Kinks. The first, when you are looking at the discography of a band, a musical artist, very often one of the things that you see is a level of growth, a progression in what they do, right? To where you look at albums that they recorded at one point in their career, you look at albums they recorded at another point in their career, and those albums don't always compare easily to one another. I ran into this a few weeks ago when I did my Joe Jackson video because, you know, Joe's albums, I mean, are just across the board different from one another. I mean, it's hard to find, you know, three albums in a row that sound similar to one another. And the Kinks have some of that problem. The Kinks' discography as a whole can be divided into three rough chunks. The first chunk, the first stage of their career, was when they were a 60s British pop band, one of the British invasion bands. Most people, when they think of the Kinks, will think of songs from that era. You Really Got Me, All Day and All of the Night, that kind of stuff, right? And they were cranking out albums and recording lots of really good music. But that was back in the day when the central structural unit of a musical artist's output was the individual song, right? And so I'm looking at their first few albums, and they're collections of songs. There's nothing that really holds them together. In rock music in general, that changed. It used to be that everything was song centered. In the mid 60s, late 60s, that changed. 66, right? You got the Beach Boys releasing Pet Sounds. You've got the Beatles releasing Sgt. Pepper. And from that point forward, the central structural unit of rock music became the album, right? I'm not just recording individual songs. I'm trying to make an album. That happened with the Kinks as well. So their first few albums they're just collections of good 60s pop rock music. Then in the late 60s through the mid 70s, they shifted into, nope, we are making albums now, which coincides roughly with Ray Davis's emergence as the producer for the band as well as the primary songwriter. And so they released a series of albums. I'm going to go ahead and lump all these together as concept albums, but they're not all concept albums. Some of them are just albums with a really strong theme. And here I'm thinking things like Village Green Preservation Society. Some of them are actual concept albums, and here I'm thinking Arthur. Some of them are... I really do not want to use the term rock opera because I hate the term rock opera. I'm sorry, no. Tommy is not an opera. Tommy is musical theater. Tommy has more in common with Stephen Sondheim than it does with, you know, Wagner. Okay, so no. So I don't like rock opera. I prefer to think of them as theatrical, musical theater. And the Kinks did a lot of musical theater albums. And here I'm thinking of things like Preservation Acts 1 and 2, right? After sales of their albums had pretty much bottomed out, they shifted back into, okay, enough of the high concept theater albums. Let's do just good old fashioned rock albums again. And they switched. They switched into their third stage. So the first stage is 60s pop records. Second stage is theatrical concept. Third stage is back to pop records, but now we're doing what most people call arena rock. By this point in their touring, they had gotten popular enough that they were filling big venues, and it's hard to rock a big venue with a song like Dedicated Follower of Fashion or Days. They're wonderful songs, but they don't exactly raise the roof of an arena. So you need some bigger songs, heavier songs, and that's what they segued into, and from the mid 70s, late 70s through to the end of their recording career, that's pretty much where they lived. And it seems to me not just difficult but also unfair to try to evaluate relative quality of albums that are from these different eras, because you can't really stack the Kinks Present a Soap Opera up against, say, Kinda Kinks up against, say, Word of Mouth, right? They're trying to do different things, and so ranking the albums of the Kinks becomes problematic for me because of that. And then secondly, one of the frustrations I have with album ranking videos, now don't get me wrong, I'm going to keep doing album ranking videos because I love album ranking videos. I like watching them, I like doing them. But I also like for there to be a little bit of suspense. I'm assuming that anybody watching this is watching this because they're a fan of the Kinks, not necessarily because they're a fan of Pop and Nick's music. Although there are going to be some of you that are fans of me. You're not necessarily fans of the Kinks, and yay, I love and cherish you for this. But most people who are going to watch this video are people who like the Kinks albums. And these people tend to be familiar with the discography, which means the farther into a ranking you get, the less suspense there is, because the fewer options there are. By the time you get to the top 5, most people watching the video have a pretty good idea of how it's going to shake out. By the time you get to the top 2, there's virtually no suspense, and there's absolutely no suspense for what's going to be the top ranked album. Whereas if you do a top 10, there's suspense. The Kinks recorded 24 studio albums over the course of their career. I'm only talking about 10 of them today. So, hey, anything could be in that top 5. So that's why today we are going to count down the top 10 albums by the Kinks. Before we get into this countdown, a quick word from our unofficial sponsor, Schofferhofer Beer. Oh, I love Schofferhofer. Today's featured flavor is pomegranate. Ooh. Schofferhofer. It's good beer. Okay, we'll work on the ad copy. Also, before we get into the top 10, we have to do this. The subjectivity notice. Excuse me. Artistic appreciation is, by its very nature, a subjective thing. It is an intuitive thing. There is no such thing as objectively good or objectively bad music. There is only music that I like and music that I do not like. And as long as we keep that in mind, any sort of discussion of music, relative qualities of music, that sort of thing, is always fun and instructive and entertaining and informative and all of this wonderful stuff. Nothing but good and happiness and sunshine comes from a discussion of an art form with other people who like that same art form. It's the whole reason why we're doing these things in the first place. That all falls apart very quickly as soon as somebody comes into the conversation thinking there's such a thing as right and wrong. There is no such thing as right and wrong. I'm going to give you my top 10 Kinks albums. That does not mean I am saying for all eternity, for all time, everybody must agree that these are the de facto 10 best albums that the Kinks... No, these are my top 10. These are my favorite 10. There will be places where we disagree. There are a couple of them. I know there's going to be a couple of places where we hugely disagree, and that's okay. That we have different tastes, right? I'm not going into this with the intent of pissing anybody off with my contrary top 10. I'm just laying these out. These I think are the 10 best albums. If you want to, if you feel like I've got them ranked inappropriately and you want to make a comment down below, I welcome that. That's a wonderful conversation. That's why we're doing this. If you want to tell me that I'm wrong or I'm not a true fan because I don't have X album rated in the top 5, well, you know, yeah, go piss up a rope. We we don't do that here at Papa Nick's Music. Now, we also need to talk very quickly about the ground rules. When we rank albums, whether it's a full album ranking or a top 10, we follow some fairly basic rules here at Papa Nick's Music. We only include original studio albums that have their primary purpose to be a collection of songs. So no greatest hits compilations, no live albums, no EPs, and no soundtracks, Christmas albums, that kind of stuff. Which, as I said a second ago, leaves us with 24 albums, and I'm going to pick my top 5 or my top 10 out of those 24. Are we ready? Okay. Now, I'm actually going to have an 11th album here because I want to have an honorable mention. And this is not one that I can rank in the top 10 because it's both a compilation and a live album. But if by any chance you are one of the few people who's watching this video because you're a fan of me, not so much because you're a fan of the Kinks, and you're looking for a good place to dip your toes in, I would strongly recommend To the Bone from 1994. To the Bone is the Kinks version of an unplugged album, right? In the mid 90s, unplugged albums were all the rage, thanks to the Unplugged series on MTV. And the Kinks did one. They did To the Bone. The bulk of this version is a 2 CD set, back in the good old days when they came in these big boxes. And it is all but 2 of the songs are songs from the Kinks catalog. We've got All Day and All of the Night. We've got You Really Got Me. It's got to be on here somewhere. I'm not seeing it, but it's on here somewhere. We've got Don't Forget to Dance, Better Things, Do It Again, Set Me Free. I'm just randomly, my eyes are flitting across the track listing. There's just a bunch of good, solid Kinks songs. They're done in an interesting way. This is not what you would get if you bought the albums, but it does introduce you to the songs. And many of the songs that are on here, I think, are actually comparable to, if not better than, their original version. I strongly recommend To the Bone. It's a good place to start if you're looking to get into the Kinks catalog. Okay, now for our top 10. For my number 10, I have to use... Oh, there it is. I have to use this. For number 10, I've got Something Else by the Kinks, and I don't have a copy of Something Else by the Kinks. Something Else by the Kinks was released in 1967, and it is on my top 10 list as a representative of the 60s albums. I would have pretty much the same comment to make about any of their 60s albums, which is, these are collections of songs, and so if you know that there's a song that you like, that would be a good that would be a good album for you. One of my favorite of their original span 60s songs is Waterloo Sunset. I just adore this song. It is such a beautiful song. And Something Else by the Kinks has Waterloo Sunset on it. So it's the one that I'm going to pluck out of that original 60s lineup. It's going to make my top 10 just because it has Waterloo Sunset. Oh, I love Waterloo Sunset. As much credit as Ray Davis deserves for the Kinks, he is the primary songwriter. He produced the albums from the late 60s on. He is the creative force that drives the band. Dave Davis also deserves a lot of credit, and I think he is a really very highly underrated guitarist. His mastery of the instrument is strong, and he has a very distinct sound that had a significant impact on rock music. Most rock guitar players owe a debt of gratitude to that distorted sound from You Really Got Me and All Day and All of the Night, and that is Dave Davis there. But where I think he really shines in the lineup of the band is as a background vocalist. He's a good singer, but when he sings lead, his voice is just thin enough to where it's it's not something that I can take for very long, right? I've got two or three of Dave's solo albums. I think I've got two of them. And I enjoy listening to them, but I can't listen to them regularly. I can't listen to them frequently because his voice becomes something of a mosquito after too long. But as a background voice, oh my God, it is fantastic. And the background vocals he does on Waterloo Sunset just, I think they rival any vocal harmony song from the 60s. This is on par with anything that the Beach Boys ever did. I just Waterloo Sunset is fantastic. Love that song. So, on the strength of that one song, Something Else by the Kinks is number 10. Coming in at number 9. Okay, I feel I have to represent the musical theater albums on here. I will be honest, that part of the Kinks catalog is the part that I'm the least fond of, and also, I will admit, the least familiar with. But if I'm going to pick one of their theatrical albums, I'm going to pick The Kinks Present a Soap Opera. As you can tell, I've got the Best Buy series version. Ooh, high quality vinyl here at Papa Nick's Music. And if I'm going to include the Kinks Present a Soap Opera, I'm going to include this because it's got some good songs on it. Everybody's a Star is a good song. Have Another Drink is a good song. But mostly it has Ducks on the Wall, which is where these ducks come from. Ducks on the Wall. I love this song. Oh, that's a great song. Got a wonderful sense of humor. So if I've got to include one of their theatrical albums, it's going to be Soap Opera, simply because it's got Ducks on the Wall on it. So, Soap Opera from 1975 is my theatrical album. Coming in at number 8. Okay, let me fortify myself before I get into this with some lovely, tasty pomegranate Schofferhofer. That's good beer. Coming in at number 8. There are a few albums that I think most Kinks fans, most diehard, dipped in the river Styx by their heels Kinks fans, are going to agree are among the best albums that the Kinks did. They are among the best albums ever created. Oh, they love these albums. And on some of these, I agree. They're going to be cropping up in my top 5. And on some of them, I don't agree. This is one that most fans are going to have definitely in their top 5, probably in their top 3, and it's going to be a contender for number 1. And I'm including it at number 8, even though I'm not particularly fond of the album. And that is Lola versus Power Man and the Money Go Round, Part 1. It's not a bad album. The Kinks never released a bad album. I mean, if you've watched any of my album ranking videos, you know that one of the first things I do is I go through the albums, I listen to them again, and I give them letter grades. Right? C is an average, typical workmanlike album. It's competent. It's professionally done. B is it's professionally done, but it's also recommended. You ought to pick up a copy of this. D is not all that recommended. A is superlative. Oh man, this is setting the world on fire. F is, oh holy mother of God, can we please, light a match, right? And the Kinks never did a C album. Everything they did is B or better. Everything they did always starts with a base level of competence that is above average, because they were just that good. I mean, they were that good musically. Ray Davis was that good as a songwriter, and he was that good as a producer, to where they could go in there and they could just slap something together and release it, and it would still be better than the average, simply because they were such good craftsmen, I think. So I'm not saying this is a bad album. I'd give it a good solid B+. It's just not among my favorites. It does not grab me the way everything else on this top 10 grabs me. It does have some good songs on it. It's got 8 Man, which I love. It has, of course, Lola. So just based on the fact that it's got Lola, that's reason to like the album. Number 8, Lola versus Power Man and the Money Go Round Part 1 from 1970. Okay, I'm done with the contractual obligation stuff. From here on, I'm not putting in anything because I think it's expected of me. Coming in at number 7, we've got an interesting album here at number 7. I was just talking about how one of the first things I do when I'm working on an album ranking video, when I'm planning it out, is I go through the catalog, I listen to all the albums, and I give them letter grades. And before I even do that, I will very informally, just shooting from the hip, shuffle the albums mentally, right? When I'm listening to an album for the first time, when I'm just living with an album, I'm not thinking in terms of trying to explain to anybody why I think it's a good or a bad album. It's just something that I'm experiencing. I tend to think in tiers, a rough form of the grading system, right? I'll listen to this album and it's top tier, middle tier, bottom tier, right? This is a good example of this group's work. This is a moderate example, and this is mediocre example, right? And this album, when I did that informal shuffle, I would have thought, okay, if I'm ranking all 24 albums, this thing's going to be in the mid to upper teens. It's going to be like somewhere between 15 and 18. It's going to be in that neighborhood somewhere. Because as I just think of the album, nothing about it stands out as being particularly noteworthy or particularly good. It's just, it's a competently recorded album that doesn't stand out from the herd. And then I listened to the albums and I realized I have been horribly, horribly cruel to my number 7 album, 1971's Muswell Hillbillies. Oh, there we go. Muswell Hillbillies. This is a really good album. And I've always just kind of dismissed it as an also-ran. It's got some good stuff on here. We've got 20th Century Man, which is great. We've got Skin and Bone, which is great. Alcohol is great. Have a Cup of Tea is great. The title, almost title track, Muswell Hillbilly. Great. This is a really good album. And I'm not sure why I had it just, informally nestled in the mid to upper teens in my mind. Because no, it's top 10. It is, in fact, number 7, 1971. Muswell Hillbillies. I like this album. Number 6 is one of their arena rock albums. This is from 1978, and it is Misfits. Misfits is a good album. We've got some good songs on here. I'm going to read off of my notes rather than the tiny print on the CD case here. We've got Hay Fever, which I've always liked. It's got a nice sense of humor to it. Permanent Waves is a good song. We've got a couple of songs that are a little on the cringy side when I listen to them today, but I liked them back in the day. Black Messiah and Out of the Wardrobe. And I still like both of them. I just, a little cringy playing them in public. The only real dog on the album is the song Live Life, which is, there are a few songs that I just cringe. A few types of songs, generic types of songs. One of them is this is my life and I'm going to take control and I'm going to live my life and I'm not going to let anyone tell me what to do kind of a song. And one of them is, like the corollary to that. Oh, if all you need to live your life, don't pay attention to how bad the news is. You do you and you'll be good, right? I hate that kind. I hate anything that is trying to tell me how to live. So I don't like that song. That song's a skipper. But apart from that, this is a strong album. Misfits from 1978, number 6. Okay, we're now in the top 5. And I will tell you, from here on out, we have arguably perfect albums. These are all, oh my God, good, right? We're high B to low A to mid A. I would give Misfits a good solid A. I'd give Muswell Hillbillies an A to A minus. I'm including Something Else by the Kinks. The Kinks Present a Soap Opera, and Lola versus Power Man and the Money Go Round Part 1 in part as a contractual obligation. I don't want to piss too many people off, kind of a thing. So I'm not going to divulge the grades that I'd give to them, though we know they're at least B's, right? But from here on out, it's good solid A plus territory. From here on out, we're talking about arguably perfect albums. From here on out, we're talking about albums that I will fight over. Okay? Coming in at number 5. Probably in terms of record sales, the pinnacle of their arena rock era was 1983's State of Confusion. And I really, really like this album. It has a certain sound to it that the albums around it don't have, at least not to the degree. Give the People What They Want has some of it. Word of Mouth has some of it. Those are the albums on either side of it. But there's just like a muffled sound to the production, which is one reason why I would say maybe it's not a perfect album. Because I would like to go in there and mess with the EQ a little bit just to ease that muffling up. The other reason I would lean towards it not being a perfect album is the song Bernadette. Dave Davis sings Bernadette, and it's a nifty little song. It's an up-tempo rocker, and I like the tune, but his voice, it's high, and it's piercing, and I don't know that I will listen to Bernadette every time I listen to the album. I'm not going to go so far as to call it a skipper, but it's close. But everything else on here is fantastic. State of Confusion, the title track, is a wonderful song. Definite Maybe is a great song. Property, oh, I love Property. Young Conservatives is good. Cliches of the World B movie, I think, is fantastic. That's it. It's going to rank up there if I do a top 10 of Kinks songs, which I'm considering doing. It's the arena rock nominee for top 5. It is up there with Waterloo Sunset and Autumn Almanac, as far as I'm concerned, as consideration for best song these guys ever did. It also has Come Dancing, which was the big radio hit, which is the song that most people know. It's got Don't Forget to Dance, which I think is a fairly weak song, relatively speaking. That might be another reason why I wouldn't put it at why I wouldn't say that it's perfect. It's got a couple of songs that I think are subpar. But overall, stellar album. A+, good, strong, hearty recommendation. Whew, love me some State of Confusion. Okay, at number 4. That's good beer. It's a crap slogan, but it works. A common feature of my videos is I will get to this point and I will bitch about people who do these videos who get to this point and say, well, from here on out, it really could be a tie. And I call these, I take these people to task every time. Oh, no, if you're going to be ranking these things, then by God, you need to rank them. Don't do this cop-out, ooh, everything's a tie from here on out nonsense. And here I am, hoist on my own petard. I've got 2 albums here that I'm ranking at 4 and 3 that could just as easily be swapped. I mean, I have a really hard time separating the two. I think, and I'm going to have the same problem with 2 and 1. And I think in both of these pairs, I've got one album that I think is technically better than the other, but the other is one that I feel more emotionally connected to, right? So I think these are inhabiting, in essence, the same spot. It's just one of them is there because of technical reasons, you know, the quality of the songwriting, that kind of stuff. And the other one is there because it just speaks to me personally, right? And so in this first pair of technical achievement versus speaking to me personally, I'm going to put the technical achievement first. So coming in at number 4 is 1969's Arthur, or The Decline and Fall of the British Empire. This is from the concept album phase. This was the songs that were written for a TV drama that Ray Davis was planning to make that never got made. So it It's not technically a soundtrack. It's music that he wrote that he was going to include in this thing. But it's got some, it is a commentary on British life in the '60s, and it is just fantastic. It's got some wonderful songs. Victoria is on here, which is a lovely song. Yes Sir, No Sir is great. Driving is good. Australia. I love Australia. That's a great song. She Bought a Hat Like Princess Marina's. I love She Bought a Hat Like Princess Marina's. The title track, Arthur. Shangri-La. There's a lot of really good stuff on here. This is a good, strong album. It features, I think, pound for pound, some of Ray Davis's best songwriting. Technically, like I said, I think this thing is an achievement as far as songwriting goes. I love it. It's just, it doesn't connect with me. It doesn't resonate with me the way 1977's Sleepwalker does. Trying not to get a glare from my lights. I think that's about as good as I'm going to get. I love Sleepwalker. Oh my God, do I love this album. It's a fairly short album. We've only got 8 songs on here. Granted, each one's 5 minutes long, but still. But not a skipper in the bunch, right? Not a skipper in the bunch, right? Arguably perfect albums. These songs speak to me on like a molecular level. We've got Life on the Road, which is great. Mr. Big Man, which is great. The title track, Sleepwalker. Side 2 has jukebox music, which is just a wonderful. Stormy Sky. My God, do I love Stormy Sky. I love Sleepwalker in ways that I as you can tell, it leaves me speechless. And I can't explain why. It's just, it connects to me on a personal level. I very strongly like Sleepwalker. It's a great album. It's also, I think, a very user-friendly album. That might be one of the reasons why I connected so strongly with it when I heard it the first time. A lot of these songs are just good, solid pop rock music. This was the first album that they recorded after they got out of their concept / musical theater phase. This was, in essence, getting back to what they were doing in the 60s. And boy, howdy did they knock it out of the park. Number 3, 1977's Sleepwalker. Okay, so I've got the same kind of thing here with number 2 and number 1 that I had with number 4 and number 3, right? I put Arthur in 4 and Sleepwalker in 3 because I think I want to have a tie there, but I can't have a tie. So I gave the Emotional Connection album the nod. I've got the same thing with these 2 albums that I've got ranked at number 1 and number 2, and I'm going the other way this time. I think these are both these. I've got a tie here at number 1, if I'm being honest. I think both of these albums are perfect. They're not arguably perfect. They are perfect, I think. They are fantastic albums. They are the 2 albums that I'm going to risk my life to try to save if the house is on fire, right? One of them, I think I feel this way about it because I've got an emotional connection to it. The other one, I think I feel this way about it because I think the quality of the material is that much better. So I'm going with the emotional connection for number 2 this time, and the one I've got the emotional connection to is 1981's Give the People What They Want. Man, do I love this album. Okay, so this is 81. That's the year I graduated from high school. I don't mind dating myself here at Pop and X Music. When I was in high school, I was dimly aware of the Kinks. They had a pretty successful live album. One for the Road was released, I think, in 1980. And I certainly knew the big hits from the 60s. I knew You Really Got Me and All Day and All of the Night. I knew Waterloo Sunset, and I knew Dedicated Follower of Fashion and Well Respected Man, right? I was familiar with all of these songs. And so I knew who the Kinks were, but I wasn't really a fan of the Kinks until I started, when One for the Road came out, and that was a popular album, and that spurred a little bit of interest, and so I started listening to some of the, the arena rock albums, the Sleepwalker, that kind of stuff. And so I was caught up. I was fully on board as a fan when this one came out, when Give the People What They Want came out. So I was already a Kinks fan when this one came out, and I think that's why I've got the emotional connection to it that I do have. It's a very good album. I mean, I'm saying it's perfect, right? What is a perfect album? A perfect album is an album that is free of skippers. You cannot skip a track. It has a level of quality that is such that you can't think of anything that would be done that would improve it, which was the problem I had with State of Confusion, right? That I think we could probably improve the sound of that thing a little bit. It is superlative. The songwriting, the production, the performance, everything about it is just a notch above most of its peers. And it's an album that you want to consume in its entirety. You don't want to take it in bits and pieces. Once you start it, you want to be able to finish it. And those all apply to Give the People What They Want. There's some fantastic songs on here. Around the Dial is great. The title track, Give the People What They Want, is great. Predictable is great. Back to Front is great. Better Things is a fantastic song. One of the things I like about Better Things is that it's a positive song. It is I was just bitching about Live Life off of Misfits, right? That, hey, buck up, you can do it, right? That I don't like that kind of song. Better Things is that kind of song, but it's that kind of song done right. It is an optimistic song, which is unusual in rock music in general. For the most part, rock is angry, and when it's not angry, it tends to be sad. It's hard to find rock music that is happy, and Better Things is a happy song. Art Lover, I have always liked. A little bit of Abuse. But overall, fantastic album. I love this album. Number 2, 1981's Give the People What They Want. For my number 1, those of you who are familiar with the discography notice that there are at least 2, if not 3, widely considered best albums they've ever done that have not cropped up on the list yet. Is it one of those? Ooh, suspense. Brought to you by Schofferhofer. That's good beer. This is the other album that I would have technically, or that I would have if I'm being honest with myself, in a tie at number 1, and I'm giving it the nod because I think it is technically the superior album. And that is 1979's Low Budget. This is, again, arguably perfect album. There's not a stinker on in the bunch. There's no skippers on here. The quality of the songwriting is just like 2 notches better than this on a very fine dial. The closest we've got to songs I don't like are the songs that I just got tired of hearing. Catch Me Now I'm Falling and Wish I Could Fly Like Superman. I'm perfectly okay to not listen to those, but they're not really skippers. I think they're both good songs. I'm not, I don't cringe at either one of them. I'm just a little tired of hearing them. But the rest of this, oh my gosh, Attitude is fantastic. Pressure, God, do I like Pressure. Misery is great. Moving Pictures, oh, I love movie, and In a Space, I love both. Oh man, the title track, Gallon of Gas. I mean, this is just, it's a perfect album. Oh man. And for all of you who are fans of the Village Green Preservation Society, I apologize, but I've just never been a big fan of that album. It is, to me, at best, 14 or 15 slaughter. It's certainly not it's not a top 5. Certainly not a top 3. No. Sorry. That's just the way it goes. Anyway, that's how I see the top 10 Kinks albums. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. I'm always happy to have that conversation. Unless you're going to leave the comment to tell me that I'm not truly a fan because I'm not that fond of Village Green Preservation Society, in which case, yeah. Um, if you made it this far in the video, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I hope you will click like. Go ahead and click the subscribe button, and while you're clicking, make it a hat trick. Click that notification icon. I appreciate it. Thanks again for watching, and I hope that the rest of your day is harmonious. See you soon.